Today I'm going to show you 7 different looking landscapes and an exercise you can do to get you thinking differently about your landscape photography. So I was going through my images recently and I noticed a trend. I also looked through a load of landscape photos online from some of the best photographers out there, and they all seem to follow a similar trend. Now this got me thinking, if I was to show all of you these things, then you could go out with this short list, which would, in theory, give you ideas to get much more compelling photographs of whatever landscape you're in. Also, in just going through different photographs like this, it has definitely got me thinking differently and has really highlighted what I need to work on in my landscape photography. So first of all, I'll explain each of the categories to you, and then later on I'll go through some photos so you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the best thing is, you can do this anytime. You can be on a bus, on a train, sitting in front of the TV, you can be pretty much anywhere. Now I had to start with a classic. This is the foreground, midground and background composition. So the photographer layers up the image so it gives it more of a 3D feel or some kind of depth to the photograph. This can be something really close, then part of a landscape in the middle, and then a landscape in the distance. It can also be maybe a person on a rocky outcrop with something behind them and then an interesting sky. Basically anything that has a lot of layers in it. It can even just be 2 layers, just something that will show depth. This is another classic, and you can use this to draw the viewer into your frame. It can be a river, a road, a path, just anything that leads the eye to the main subject or to the focal point in the shot. Sometimes there doesn't even have to be a focal point, but the leading lines will almost be the subject itself. This is where you go for more of a minimalist look. You exclude everything else from the shot and just have one thing in the frame. Or there could still be other things in the frame, but the main subject really needs to stand out and be really prominent in your frame. Sometimes a landscape is just too big for a 4x3 or a 4x5 image, and this is where panoramas come into play. These tend to be shots where if you had too much sky or too much foreground, they just wouldn't be as compelling. So in getting a thinner, longer image, it really makes the landscape look huge and grand. Now this one isn't a compositional technique, but more of a look to a photograph. And in doing this, you can sometimes draw those leading lines in. Maybe you blur a stream and then the lines in the stream almost look like leading lines, or you might blur some clouds in the sky and again they kind of draw lines in the sky. Or on the other hand, sometimes you might have a choppy sea or some clouds that just don't look right with a short exposure. And the best way to alter them in your shot is to take a long exposure shot with an ND filter, or if you were to wait for the light to drop so you can blur them across your frame during dusk when there's a lot less ambient light about. Again, this is more to do with the color and the difference between the brightest and the darkest parts of your shot, but having moody, contrasty landscapes is another way to make certain parts of the image stand out and to draw the eye to those certain points. The last type of landscape photo includes reflections. This can add to the symmetry of the shot, it can give a nice touch to the image, or it can even make quite a well-known landscape look very different. Also, all you'd need in theory is a small puddle of still water, and if you get close enough to it, you can really change how the landscape looks in your photograph. Now it's time for the fun part. Take that list of layered, leading lines, single subject, panorama, long exposure, contrasty and reflections, and call them out on a series of photos. I'll just get my computer and I'll show you what I mean. And here's a cheat sheet. Press pause and take a screen grab so you have a copy of this list. So I've opened up Google and what I'm going to type in here is landscape photography. So I've got all of these images up and all I'm going to do is call out one of the names on that list for every single one of these images. It actually trains your brain into thinking a different way when it comes to landscapes. And it doesn't have to come under just one of these headings either. A photograph can have many of these attributes. So in this first one, leading lines, dark and moody and contrasty shot. Second one, leading lines, reflections, leading lines around in this coastline, reflections, layered, reflections and layered. So you've got your foreground, midground, background. They've layered it in this, layered, loads of layers in that one. Reflections there, layered, again, foreground, midground, background. And if we scroll down a little bit, again, that one is kind of layered, but it's almost leading lines in this valley as well. Definite leading lines there. Layered, leading lines around this point. This is layered, leading lines, reflections, layered, and so on and so forth. So very quickly you can go through a whole load of photographs, and it's actually quite good fun in calling them out and spotting things that really make those photos stand out. And that's the point with this exercise. You're kind of training your brain into thinking about those 7 things that do make landscapes stand out. Now, the one way you can use this to improve your photos is to go through your Instagram page or your personal collection of your photographs and see whether you have just one type or if you've got lots of different types. And if they don't fit into any of these types, that might be a sign that you need to work on your photographs to make them more compelling. They can still be good photos without falling into one of these categories, but sometimes this will show you what's missing from your photographs. And then you can take out that knowledge, and the next time you're out in the field and the next time you're shooting a big, nice landscape, you can really start to think about what you need to include in your photographs. I have to be honest, I went through my Instagram feed and I had lots of the foreground, midground and background images, but not much else. In going through this exercise and going through my photographs, I know I need to work on getting more with leading lines, more with reflections, and more contrasty, moody kind of landscapes. Now, there might be a few of you that are thinking that I'm trivializing landscape photography by putting it into one of these 7 categories, but that's completely the opposite to what I'm trying to do. All I want to do is give you some practical tools so you can go out and very quickly take better landscape images that you can be proud of. This exercise of going through your photos or random photos is an awesome way to get your brain and your eye trained in finding compositions. So after this video, go through your landscape images and see what different types of photos you have. Do you have lots of one type, or do you have a good spread of these 7 types? Let me know in the comments below. It'll be great to hear your thoughts, and it'll be great to hear about your landscape photography. Now, if you like this video and want to learn more, click on this one next. Or if you're a binge watcher like I am, click down here. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for weekly tutorials in photography and videography. I'll see you next time.